Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our nonprofit webinar, AI Finance, Practical Tools for Smarter Nonprofit Operations. Please note that questions can be submitted in the questions window on your screen and will be answered toward the end of our discussion. We will do our best to answer as many questions as possible today, but if time runs out, we will personally be following up to make sure you receive the answers you need. For attendees that would like to receive 1 CPE credit for tuning in today, we will be launching polls throughout the session for you to select a CPE keyword. The correct keyword must be selected during the poll to receive credit for attending. If you are not tuning in today to receive CPE credit, you can disregard the polls throughout or select the option, I do not need CPE credit. A recording of the session will be sent to all registrants. Without further ado, let's meet today's speakers. Today we have with us David Rockcamp, Partner and Nonprofit Practice Leader, Jamie Rapps, Partner, and Hassan Khan, Technology Consulting Partner. I will now pass the mic over to David to kick us off. David, please take it away.
Thank you, Samantha, and good day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and for being part of session number 2, Technology for Nonprofits. We had the pleasure of hosting our first technology piece about 2 weeks ago around process improvement through technology, driving operational effectiveness. And today we'll be spending time about AI and finance, practical tools for smarter nonprofit operations. I'm pleased to represent as the practice leader of Gracia's nonprofit practice and thrilled to have Hassan and Jamie with us today to talk about AI in finance. Our nonprofit practice is a robust practice of over 600 clients throughout all of our offices here on the East Coast and into the middle part of the country as well. We're thrilled that you could be part of it, and I'm thrilled to be working with so many wonderful nonprofit organizations along with my colleagues on our webinar today and all the rest of our nonprofit team members throughout all of our offices. We do provide 6 webinar sessions over the course of 2026, as we have done over the past several years, including a grant compliance session late May, our philanthropy to growth session in late June, our annual nonprofit half-day symposium virtual in October, and lastly, a governance and spotlight, strengthening boards and accountability in November. Please visit our website where you can register for some or all of our upcoming and future live video series sessions, and we look forward to hosting you there. So today's session, AI in Finance, is a session designed to demystify AI by positioning it as a practical operational tool rather than an abstract or purely technical concept. We will outline why AI has become increasingly relevant in nonprofit finance, particularly given current pressures around increased reporting requirements, limited staffing, and heightened expectations for transparency from boards and funders. We will emphasize practical applications, showing attendees and all of you specific finance-related use cases that can be realistically implemented within your existing systems. We will also highlight the importance of governance, stressing that AI must augment, not replace, professional judgment and financial oversight. And with all of that, I'm going to turn it over to Hassan to get us started.
Really appreciate that, David, and good morning. And for some of you, good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time and being with Jamie and myself. We are excited to speak about technology holistically, but more specifically AI, this acronym that I feel has become a household acronym for the last 3.5 years. The adoption within the nonprofit arena truly has been incredible in the last year. And we'll address some of the use cases specifically within the finance function as to how AI has enabled us to just make our days a little more efficient than we may have been in the past. I love this quote that you see on your screen. We'll speak about the foundation as to how AI came about. And it really is about harnessing your data. This quote: transform, standardize, warehouse, and visualize your data for just better insights. So you can make better decisions, plan for the future, budget accordingly, and make strategic initiatives priority to ensure that data is going to be the foundation of everything that you do moving forward. I feel there's 3 specific things that have really led up to the advent of AI. It's ensuring that your data is resident in a best-in-class, best-of-breed, what is now called an ERP system, enterprise resource planning, really just a fancy word for a general ledger system that's all-encompassing. So that general ledger system has now become your GL, your AP, AR. If you have inventory within your organization, procurement, payroll, HR, it's all in one system. So that's your holistic system of record. So walking away from the QuickBooks of the world, the Sage 100s, Blackbaud used to be a preferred nonprofit general ledger system. They've somewhat lost their market. Intact, NetSuite, Acumatica, these are some of the ERPs that most nonprofits, not just within the United States, globally have moved to. So it's that cloud-focused, cloud-native ERP that a lot of you have moved to. And if you haven't, that's truly something to consider. Yes, there's a cost associated with it. Yes, there's a little bit of legwork that goes into it. But the ROI, sign passes, is just phenomenal. So you have your data in that ERP. Let's say you have a couple of other applications that you're still using. You prefer your your CRM, which is Salesforce. Let's say it's Salesforce. You appreciate that. You didn't want to get away from that. So you have your Salesforce, you're running your ERP, you have your payroll. What if you were to take information from all 3 or 4 or 5 of these applications and create a data warehouse? Just another layer that all of this information gets, pulled into, and then you can report out of it, query out of it, so that there's truly that one database that you're referencing on an ongoing basis. And there comes AI. So you have this great data lake, data warehouse. You place a AI layer on top of it. You can customize it. You can configure it to ask your data questions, make changes as you see fit. Once again, the focus on reporting. So harnessing your data from moving from legacy disparate systems to a holistic system of record like an ERP, getting into the data warehouse that you've pulled all your information into this one database, and then you're asking that database for insights as you move forward with AI. An ERP, really your backbone, your foundation, this wheel that you see in front of you, we don't have to go over it, but that outlays some of the different modules that you can purchase. And it's a subscription model that you can subscribe to if you feel it's relevant, and it'll truly end up being a very powerful tool that you use on an ongoing basis. And specifically for the folks in our audience today that are focused on the finance and accounting function, extremely critical when you look at, from your purchasing, your servicing, inventory, production, your financials, of course, one holistic system of record. Once you have your ERP, we spoke about this. How do you take some of these systems? You take information out of it, ETL, export, transform, and load into that data warehouse. Before we even get into the AI layer, there's a whole slew of data analytics that you can run. And really, if your database is based on SQL, and if you have a SQL subject matter expert that's within your team, you can look at multiple different things. Why did certain things happen? So you're looking at historical data to predict the future. Hassan, donates to your organization every single year. Over the course of the last 10 years, Hassan started with $100, seemingly looking into it by running this descriptive analytics. You can see that Hassan goes up 10% every single year with his donations. So you can predict that in 2026, when he attends your gala, what would his giving be? Powerful, so you can plan. Diagnostics, why did it happen? You can run analytics on for example, your general ledger to figure out why was a journal entry posted on a Saturday at 9 p.m. by an individual that may or should not have a reason to post such a journal entry outside of working hours. And then predictive and prescriptive data analytics, really making predictions about the future, looking at statistically at historical data. What is AI and what is it not? To me, AI is really an efficiency tool, taking you away from mundane tasks so you can focus on what's most important for you, which is your mission. Multiple different ways that you can use it, and we'll get into all of this from a use case standpoint, but it could be an assistive tool, really support automation, analysis, but it does not and will not replace the human judgment. And the last bullet point that you see, the human in the loop control, extremely critical. You can get output from your AI, but you still have to ensure and review to make sure that it's factually accurate. With that proper oversight, AI can truly accelerate all your routine tasks, surface insights, while your team still remains responsible for approvals, any interpretations, and then, of course, the accountability. It's not a matter of really, but when are we going to use it? The last bullet point, I think it's extremely powerful, by Gartner, and this is as of 6-7 months ago now, that 89%, and this is actually not just specific for nonprofits, it's for-profit and nonprofits across the US, that 89% of institutions agree that AI will improve efficiency, but only a quarter of them are using it and utilizing it as of today. Well, as of 6 months ago, but I don't think the numbers have changed dramatically over the course of the last 2 quarters. Multiple different types of AI, but really categorized into 3 large buckets. And the third bullet is probably the one that is becoming the most critical and top of mind for each and every one of us. ChatGPT is really an LLM. It's a large language model. It gives you the ability to, take your email, make it sound professional, regurgitate your thoughts in a more meaningful manner. Very powerful, but I feel that each and every one of you, including us here at the firm, we've been using it for the last 3 years. Machine learning, that's taking that large data set and looking at, the predictive behavior of data and what do we expect in the future. And then the whole agentic AI. This is not to replace people and personnel within your teams, but it's really having built-in agents within your workflow that can automate processes throughout. Very simple example, a client of ours did 2 years ago, and I bring it up so you may have, for those that are tuning in, and thank you for the ones that attend our webinars. I've spoken about the fact that one of our clients said 2 years ago that, any invoices under $1,000 in their inbox automatically gets sent forward to the general ledger, the ERP system, gets paid through their bank without any manual intervention. And the CFO and the controller get an email showcasing all the invoices that were paid systemically without anyone approving, touching, taking, placing, and for them to say, yep, it all makes sense because the 17 invoices that were paid under that materiality threshold of $1,000, these are all transactions that we would have expected. So nothing out of the normal, zero anomalies, we're good to go. And then they start their day. Takes 10 seconds for them to review that email. Very, very, very powerful. Jamie, I'll let you kick us off with some of the use cases, and we have a good few slides, so we may not get through all of them, but this will be available to you post. And I will say before Jamie jumps on that please ask your questions. We have a couple already that I see. We'll address them in the back end of our webinar, but we'll try and address them as they come in as well. So thank you.
Excellent. And thanks for the lead in there. I think you did a really good job of framing really what is out there, how companies are using it. But going to your example, what I love the most about it is they're still keeping that human in the loop, which I think is the most important part of this. And as David said earlier, you're augmenting, you're not replacing processes. You're making things smoother. You're finding repetitive tasks and you're finding ways, well, if it's repetitive, there's a pattern there. This is something that AI can likely help us with. And that's really using these agentic systems now to really lie on top of it to do it. And they're also incorporating these large language models into them as well. So you can have a conversation with it now and really understand what's going on a practical level. And it helps you in understanding what's going on too. It can help identify where maybe there's a bottleneck in the process as well. So what we're trying to accomplish with this tab here is talking about, these are just off the bat areas that I think everyone on this call can appreciate and understand where AI can be the efficiencies that you're looking for, and it's places that not-for-profits that we work with and that we speak to, they're already looking to incorporate AI, and they're already using AI in these processes. Hassan already touched on the automated accounts payable with the invoices coming into the inbox, the OCR scans it. It uses its own intelligence in the background to figure out which workflow to send it to and how to code it into the general ledger. And ultimately, if it can be approved for payment or if it needs a human in the loop to review it on top. When it comes to budgeting and forecasting, this is an area that used to take weeks to come up with a budget and forecast. You start with where you are at the end of the year. You want to make sure it's actually the final product that you had approved in the prior year. Well, now you have that, but now you're using AI on top of it to evaluate your budget to actuals from the prior year and project out into the future. You want to build a 5-year plan, you build in the growth models into it. You could make different assumptions and play them out using AI and these new tools that are being built into the workflows. I sat on a panel with some representatives from General Ledger system and one of these online bill pay systems, and that's all they were talking about was the focus on these tools that they're building in to help their clients, which are also our clients, but from different ways, from different sides of it, but how it's helping them make faster and better strategic decisions. In terms of variance and anomaly detection, just ask it a question. I wonder how many people on this call have just, if you're in a Microsoft environment, gone into the Copilot tab and said, point out something that doesn't look right here. Or when it comes to preparing an analysis for your auditors, asking it, can you proof this work paper that I put together? Check the formulas, make sure they're accurate, make sure I'm not over depreciating something, or is there something that's really old on here that maybe my auditors? Start off by saying, pretend you are an auditor, right? Just set the stage that way. Ask it to do something. If you want to pretend you're the CFO, right? Give it some guidance. Tell it what light you're trying to look at it from, and they're able to do that nowadays. It's really cool. I'll spend my time on the commute and just having conversations with their Copilot, depending on what I need to do.
Jamie, can I interject? Can you interject, because that's such a good point, and I think it was extremely meaningful for me when our firm, went on our AI journey, and I would say about 2.5 years ago, and we have a private instance of Copilot that's specific to our firm, and we use it in multiple different ways. But the first thing that I did was I introduced myself. I said, my name is Hassan Khan. I'm introducing myself to my instance of AI. My name is Hassan. I'm a tech consulting partner. Grassi, I gave a little excerpt on Grassi. I actually went a little further with my age, with my geography, so that any further questions that I want to ask my private instance of AI, it's tailored towards me. So I only wanted to give that example, Jamie. Thank you. It's not finance specific, but it's specific to the fact that making the introduction up front was very helpful.
Sure. I think that also leads to another point. We talk about all these different AI tools that are out there. I'm going to call them tools because they're there to help us, make us better. If it's free, you're the product. If you pay for it, then it is the product, right? So when you talk about using these and implementing them, there are definitely free products that are out there. And I don't want to discount that by any stretch of the word. I like to look for recipes online sometimes if I'm trying to do something. And for that, Google Gemini is great. I'm not putting any type of client information, donor information, anything else on there. Now it knows my preferences for when I go to barbecue. But when it comes to the work that you're doing, you want to make sure that it is in a walled off, closed environment. It protects you, protects your firm, your nonprofit organization, and it's still providing that same level of support. And in fact, because you're able to give it real data, it can provide better insights to you without letting your competitors know what's going on, or giving any sensitive data, that secret sauce that makes you work, who your big donors are, right? So I want to be very clear on this. The free tools are great, but when it comes to anything that you're doing, make sure you're using a paid for version that gives you of knowing that your data is safe and secure and is not being used to train the tools in a publicly available manner.
Another great point, Jamie. Both Jamie and I, we are based out of our New York City office. Within New York State, our privacy law is called the New York Shield Act. It becomes ever so critical as to how we protect our PII, our personally identifiable information, be it for your colleagues, be it for your entire organization. So what Jamie is alluding to, that using that public AI instance, if you're going to start uploading institution-specific information, you're putting yourself at risk, because these LLMs and these agents are then training themselves on your data. So, Jamie, what a great way and what a great analogy. If it's free, you are the product. Very true when it comes to AI. If you're not paying for an enterprise level account and an instance, then there are privacy regulatory implications that you could be faced with. So very critical as we move forward. Jamie, I'll keep us moving along, but maybe for the edification of our audience, I'll try and just, I'll throw in some quick bullet points at the end of each slide, because, and our fault really, some of these slides are fairly voluminous. But if I think about where AI delivers practical ROI, really just focus on your high volume, repeatable finance processes, because any errors within your finance function are going to be costly. They're going to be visible to your board, your audit committee. AI should be used to strengthen your controls while improving efficiency. So the ROI here is you're focusing on your high volume, repeatable processes, all the while making sure that you have your guardrails and controls in place so that you have a good foundation moving forward.
As an exercise, I would just suggest, if you think through your role today, what's repetitive and what you think your role is going to look like in 5 years from now, start trying to think through that and shifting towards that and figure out how AI could be your ally in getting there. I mean, if you spend your day doing debits and credits, well, there are bank feeds now that come in and the AI is laying on top of that and knowing how you're coding things historically, and it's starting to already predict where certain expenses, where certain revenues are coming in and where they should already be coded. So it's going to free you up. When it comes to month-end closes, I mean, the bank rec's pretty much automated. If it's connected to your bank account online, it already knows the month-end ending balance. So just think about that as you're going through it. Categories driving ROI, obviously there's workflow, automation. We spent time talking about that. Collaborative platforms, this is those data warehouses that Asana was talking about earlier, as well as other online tools that allow you to really collaborate, talk together, and work together to problem solve. You have program and case management, CRM and fundraising platforms, and productivity tools and analytics, which is really where, I know last time we asked the question, where are people really finding a return on investment on this? These are all places where you can find measurable outcomes in implementing AI. On the fundraising platforms, knowing that Asana has the capacity and grows its contributions each year can be a very powerful tool for your nonprofit. Can definitely demonstrate an ROI right there. I had somebody talk to me the other day just about the fact with payroll. They have an AI that'll sit on top of it and make sure that your files are up to date, that your files, your employee personnel files are in compliance with whichever state you are employing them in, making sure that you have the proper paperwork there and what's missing, it'll flag it for you. So that way you have a chance to go ahead and correct for it now, as opposed to being audited by a DOL or whomever and not having that information ready on the spot for them. So really providing that return on investment right away.
Very, very, very well said, Jamie. I think it's, and I know you're going to address the, from an audit standpoint, how does AI really come into play? But if I think about the example that you just mentioned, you're reconciling, you have your payroll, you have your HR documentation, and you have, 700 employees. AI can quickly say that for these 700 employees, there's 118 that have missing forms. And this could pose an issue, especially if you're reporting up to a government entity for your funding and your grants. So you can quickly run that check. And with AI, it'll actually prompt you or send you a notification, and you can set the cadence that, every quarter, run a check on all employee personnel documentation, vendor documentation. If there's gaps and anomalies, notify me. So you don't have to, have 7 people that are continuously doing this on an ongoing basis. You can have an agent that can do that for you. Very powerful, especially when you have that human in the loop that we spoke about. And that will remain the case. And that is the underlying premise of AI, that you still need that human intervention so that you can adopt better, easier, make sense of the output that AI is giving you. Very critical.
First of all, the second CPE word is on the screen. So for those of you that need it, we'll keep this up for another probably 30 seconds to a minute to allow everybody a chance to respond to it. But another use case for those of you that have hourly employees, you can use Copilot. I'm used to using Copilot in Excel, so that's what I'm used to asking it to do. But if you know that aides are supposed to be getting paid, I don't know, $16.75 an hour, right? You can ask it just, hey, anybody getting paid in addition to that? So number one, you can flag who's being paid on top of what the average rate should be. Number two, you can also ask, who are my common overtime users, right? Who am I paying the most overtime out to? And then it could allow you to start thinking through, does this make sense? Maybe there's a reason for it, or maybe they're just buddies with the scheduler and it's always going to them, right? It allows you to really start looking at this, and maybe instead of paying overtime, it might be more cost effective to either find somebody who doesn't have the maximum amount of hours for the week that maybe wants to pick up another shift, hire somebody, or just speak to them to understand what's going on. Are there a lot of call outs that are happening right before a shift ends and you just happen to be there, right? A lot of just different use cases that you could just think through and really implement this to help out with. In terms of starting and what to avoid, definitely want to think through, and as we said a few times already, what are these high manual effort pain points? What are we doing repetitively that are just taking a lot of time, right? That's going to, just off the bat, that's going to provide a huge return on investment right there. Once you've identified this and you say, okay, we know we want to the process, at that point, you start doing your research on what type of programs you want to look for, but also start looking for champions. Start finding those people that really want to implement this new AI tool that's being rolled out, people that are really going to benefit from it. Or on the flip side, be concerned about the implementation of AI and how it will impact their job and their career, right? You want them to have a stake in this and hopefully convert them to understand why this is better for them in the long run, right? So you start to go ahead and identify, you build out the infrastructure that's going to really help speed up the adoption and the implementation. The last thing you want to do is spend a lot of money on a shiny tool that just sits on the shelf doing nothing.
Yeah. Jamie, salient points throughout, start with that one pain point instead of an entire enterprise rollout. Don't think that this AI tool is going to be the end all be all. Really identify that one process or that one pain point and then focus in on that. Find how you can customize your AI or without getting into the technicalities of it, what Python workflow that you're going to automate with the help of a third-party vendor that's going to come in, look at your business processes and say, you know what, if this is your critical juncture where you need some assistance with, focus in on that first. Then train your staff based on the outputs that AI is giving you. Ensure that your staff is adequately trained and is apt at making sure that they can, reason with output, understand what the output is, and then take action accordingly. Avoid bad data. But I think you would have covered that through your ERP, your export, transform, load processes, because you have that warehouse that AI is layered onto. So you've avoided bad data. You still have that human in the loop, so you don't have blind trust. And the one thing that we're going to speak about, as we progress with our webinar, is shadow AI. So there's institution-wide AI that you've paid for, and you have configured, you've customized, and now you're using it. But what if you have employees that are using AI that is outside of your it's still within your network, but it's not authorized. So they're paying for, so let's say Copilot is your preferred tool of choice, but you have an employee that's using Claude. What if they end up using Claude and the outputs are now being jumbled? So just shadow AI is going to be a very critical risk area for 2026 and beyond, especially as we move into the agentic workflow.
Just touching on one of the things that you just said in terms of the build out, just go back to that slide for a minute.
Yeah.
When you're thinking through systems to implement, we're not saying like just find a system that does exactly what you want. There are going to be systems out there as well that have the capability to do everything that you want. Whether it's a Sage or they have all these tools that are out there, but it doesn't mean that you need to go ahead and just implement every single one of these different modules that they have there. Be selective in it. It's not a race. You can take your time, right? Do one module at a time. Do one process, and as you start bringing these on, see what else you could be doing and what's next on the list.
Yeah, great point, Jamie. Before we get into the operational use cases, and I feel the next 2 or 3, 4 slides we have addressed already, but before we get into that, we do have a question that I wanted to just quickly address before we get into the use cases. What is the typical implementation timeline for setting up these AI tools in an existing ERP system? So I'll bifurcate this question. If you've chosen a best-in-class, best-of-breed ERP system like a NetSuite, Intacct, Acumatica, there's a whole slew of ERPs that you can choose from. A lot of them now have AI workflows, automations built in. So you're using the power and you're paying for the license for your general ledger system, your ERP system with AI built in. So very powerful. And these multi-billion-dollar companies that own and run these ERPs, they're spending millions on R&D. So they have all the great automation that's already pre-built in. If you're going to think through how to layer AI with either reporting or a dashboard that you need, or your audit committee or board is looking for certain reporting that your ERP is not giving, that's where your AI layer comes in. And the question is, what is a typical implementation for setting up these AI tools? It will really be dependent on how many workflows you're trying to automate, how many reports you're trying to run, or that are being automated so you don't have to run these reports anymore. But I would say within the finance function, and I've seen this happen with one of our clients a couple of months ago, they had a third-party vendor come in that took data from 7 different systems, built a data warehouse, had 21 different agents deployed across AP, AR, payroll, and even onboarding, provisioning, and deprovisioning in the HR function. It took them a couple of months to put these agents together. So typical implementation timeline for the finance function, I can see that being a month or 2 if you're a mid-sized nonprofit. But before you embark on that journey, do look and see what AR workflows you already are paying for within your ERP system. Hopefully that answers the question, but we're happy to take it offline anytime.
Yeah, it's funny with all the efficiencies that are gained within building the data warehouse and how it's very helpful to the client. And it's also helpful on the audit side. It does add additional risk from the audit side. And I know we'll talk about it a little bit later, but it's taking what used to be simple IT environments where you had your different systems, but there was a manual entry. So there was no pushing and pulling from different systems into the general ledger. So there was no really risk for a mistake on that. You had human error, it was being tested for. Now we're spending more time focusing on the technology risk that's there from these new automated systems and processes that are coming in. So it's an interesting interplay of how that all works. But why don't we go to the next slide 18, because I think we covered slide 17 really in detail. But on slide 18, standardized expense reporting, I think that's an area that really I've been fielding a ton of questions about recently. Is we're spending so much time hunting down receipts and just managing our credit cards and even just reporting out. It's taking us forever to close because we can't get these last few things. And these are areas that really we're fielding questions on now. So there are definitely systems that are out there that issue these virtual credit cards, and they're now prompting the employee, when you give them a virtual credit card and they utilize it to spend, first of all, you can restrict which spend categories they're actually spending on. The federal grant and they can't spend anything on alcohol. Well, Now they're restricted from not spending on alcohol, right? You could put a limit. They can only spend up to $100 or $50, whatever it is. They can't charge more than that on this card. But also it's prompting them now to submit a receipt with a quick and easy to use link. They get a text message. Please click here to upload your receipt right after the transaction goes through. Let us know what it's for. All right, if you design the workflow appropriately, it can ask you what it's for. If you have multiple sites and locations, it could ask you to choose the location where it's going to. It takes the employee maybe 5 or 10 seconds, and then they could toss out the receipt. They don't have to hold on to it and submit it for reimbursement later on down the line. So this very powerful tool and saving a lot of people time.
If just a quick example on the second bullet point, Jamie, the expense reporting, I've seen an example at a client. So we don't use that, so I can't really speak to it. But they use RAMP for their expense reporting, and the way they've configured RAMP is that it's connected to their email, which they use Microsoft 365. So they have Outlook. If the CFO was to have dinner with Hassan Khan and it's on his calendar, which was the case, and he showed it to me, it was on his case, he had dinner, the credit card was linked to RAMP. So it picked up the fact that at 6 p.m. there was a dinner. On the receipt, it said there were 2 people that were at the table. So RAMP picked it up, sent it to the ERP system, and they actually had it expensed out without the CFO touching it, because it mirrored what their Outlook had on the calendar. So 0 manual intervention. That expense was automatically paid through, expensed through, because RAMP was connected with their Outlook. So very powerful.
And to the last bullet on here, efficiency and risk reduction, we talk about reducing audit preparation efforts. Because all these receipts and invoices are now being a part of the process and they're being automated into the process, when it comes to finding the support for transactions, when and if they are selected, you now have it at your fingertips. It's really, you don't have to go look for the paper receipts anymore when you already have it there. And you could just print out the workflow and show it to your auditors as well, that look at the approval process it follows. This is in line with our policies and procedures. So it really is cutting down the time needed on our clients when it comes to them finding the data and the support that's required throughout the audit process.
Yeah, faster closes, Jamie, and fewer audit surprises at the tail end. Couldn't agree more.
Why don't we move on to slide 20? I think we covered these already.
Yep.
But as far as risk management and compliance, fraud detection and prevention, AI is really good at detecting anomalies and issuing you alerts. You can create your agent that sits on top of your general ledger and can really be analyzing your data in real time. It makes sure that your vendor files are, when you talk about compliance, your vendor files, you have the W-9s on hand for each vendor that you have. If it's over a certain dollar threshold, making sure that you documented that you did the proper bidding procedures in accordance with your policies. We already touched on the payroll use case, but even on the revenue side, if you work in the special needs space, you need an IEP, an ISP, whatever supporting documentation that you need, you can be having AI sit on top of it and make sure that you have these things in place. On the healthcare side, sometimes you need referrals. You make sure that those referrals are there, and it will flag to you and follow up on a daily basis that you might be missing something and you're running out of time. Otherwise, you're going to get a denial from wherever you're submitting it for reimbursement. Huge, really return from just the compliance aspect of it, and it minimizes the risk with there for sure.
I've seen these compliance rules and standards just being uploaded within the data warehouse, Jamie, and then AI just keeps pulling from it. And if you actually link it to a specific, and let's think of it, but a government source, and if there's a framework change, it'll automatically pick that up. That compliance rule will be updated, and it's essentially surfaced, and there's no interpretation. It's just taking it and then reconciling against all the rules that you have in place. Very powerful, because once again, it takes out that manual intervention as well.
I love it. You just say, hey, what changed? I love the fact that it could go ahead and do that.
Yep.
It's great. I mean, Yeah, we already touched on some of these, but as far as bookkeeping, I do want to just stress on that again. AI is really helping when it comes to data entry and the processing and the reconciliations. It's really freeing people up to spend more time on the operations or on just things that sometimes they feel that they just don't have enough time for in the day. But if you could take your month-end close process, which might be taking a week, and cut it down to just 1 or 2 days, that's 3 more days or 4 more days that you could be spending really on the projects that you're needed to be focusing your time on. Really help on that.
And minimizes a lot of human errors as well with the tedious data entry, and you're just sitting there, typing in for hours on end. It just completely eliminates some of the errors that would have come through. Our third CPE keyword, we'll stay on this for a couple of minutes. Not a couple of minutes, a few seconds.
I think the next one is probably my favorite slide that's coming up.
There we are. Audit prep.
Use cases for audit prep. And these are all real world examples of how we've seen AI being used throughout the audit process. Over the last few years, there have been a plethora of accounting standards that have come out that have really impacted the nonprofit community, whether it's accounting for grants and contributions, contributed non-financial assets, 606 with exchange-based type transactions, 842, right? A whole bunch of these different items. Well, a few years ago, we spent a lot of time helping out our clients with it, thinking through the process. And essentially, we were playing the role that AI is doing for many of our clients today, right? Now you go online, you could go to any of your AIs that you want to use. You go into Copilot, you can upload your own contracts if you have an enterprise level contract with them, so your data secure, Claude, whatever it is that you're using, and you say, there's this new accounting standard coming out. I need to prepare a memo for my auditors about how we are implementing this. Can you help write this? What do I need to know? What questions do you need to know to help better understand what we do so you can properly tailor it and help us tailor our processes and procedures to be in alignment with this new accounting standard? It's amazing. It writes you a nice 5-6 page memo. And then afterwards, you need to be the human in the loop where you go actually trace it back to those sources. But the initial recording of it and the initial research is being done now by AI. And because you ask it, if you then further ask it, can you give me the sources in GAP so that way I can trace this back on my own? And can you build it into it? It'll give it to you. And it makes it much easier to follow these things. If there's this little nuance, which has come up recently in mergers and acquisition accounting, at what point do you have discontinued operations accounting when you go to sell something? There is a nuance on it that at what point does management acting in its capacity actually agree to do this? Is it when they've decided to sell it? Is it when they have a letter of intent in hand? Is it when they sign the asset purchase agreement, or is it at close, right? All different areas you can make arguments for it, but it helps you really think through it, and it provides you the gap sources to do that. Mergers and acquisition accounting had a question come up about the inherent contribution included within it, and can a board that's being acquired by another organization place a restriction on the assets so that way it now counts on the new organization as a donor restriction, as opposed to it still being without donor restriction. Like these very nuanced things, and AI is so powerful in helping you find these little things within the codification. And from the client side, they're now able to provide this to their auditors, whereas their auditors maybe would have charged them for 10, 15, 20 hours of time doing the research on it. You're giving it to them, right? We talked about finding ways to cut down on costs when you have these complex transactions. And we definitely encourage you to have these transactions. We think it's great. We definitely want you to grow. But you're now able to be a partner with your auditors and give them the guidance that you've already been thinking through to help the auditors have a base level to at least build off of in terms of coming to the proper treatment.
Yeah.
Going concern analysis, lots of nuances within there as well. Helping you just craft it. Here are all the things that we're trying to do. Can you help me organize this into a memo that makes sense, right? Just help me put my thoughts into a coherent memo that I could give over. Hassan, you look like you want to say something.
No, I'm in agreement because I feel, especially on the audit prep side, be it, any transaction you may be going through or just your regular, closing your books on a monthly basis, getting ready for, your third party auditor to come in. It's incredible, extremely valuable for drafting that initial memo, your schedules, supporting these complex calculations, the following analysis, all the while ensuring, and Jamie, you kicked off this slide with the fact that management review should remain essential. You can get that memo, you can get that calculation back, you review it, and you're in a much better shape than you would have been. You've shaved off. You talk about ROI. There's going to be a spend with AI. There's any tech evolution will have a cost associated with it. This is how you recover some of the monies, because you're not placing reliance, or your staff isn't working overtime to get this done. They'd rather focus on mission critical initiatives. Very good.
Other schedules, let's just go back to that just because based off the audience, I think that's here. Other just areas that you could be using AI. If you are manually maintaining these schedules, which means that maybe your general ledger system is not one of these more modern general ledger systems, or maybe you're just not paying for a specific module because you just don't know if it's worthwhile to have it. Well, your depreciation schedules, you want to make sure it's being rolled. You want to make sure it's calculating things properly, right? You get rid of some of that human error that's on there, and then you check it at the end to make sure that the calculations that you use were right, or you just say, automate it for me. Pledges receivable. Some organizations deal with this on an ongoing basis. Some of them get a pledge once every few years. There's a requirement that you discount it to present value. And again, ask your AI to help you out with this. Help you come up with, and you can ask it to provide you the formulas to do the calculation for it and come up with what that present value of this pledge is today for an amount to be received in a future year or future years. And lastly, leases and debt amortization schedules. I'm just blown away with, I used to spend hours going ahead and preparing some of these things. And now you just ask it to do it. It puts it in a spreadsheet for you with formulas that you can check. And then you take a haphazard selection of some of the months that already have happened. You get a mortgage in May and your December year end. You can now tie out that schedule to the September, November, and December schedules to make sure that it's calculating it properly. And when it doesn't, say, hey AI, my statement showed it's this. And you could watch it. It's fascinating watching it think through the steps. Okay, let me try it this way. What about that way? Love it. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Jamie. I am going to be a little cognizant of our time together with our audience. We have another 7-8 minutes. I'll go through some of these slides. Jamie, stop me if there's anyone in particular. We've addressed quite a few.
Maybe governance one would be a good one.
Yeah, I'll get to the governance. I think the only thing I wanted to just quickly address here is that restricted fund monitoring, truly, it reduces your exposure. So that use case is extremely critical. But yes, let's keep moving forward. You address on this slide, Jamie, you address the fraud and error detection. There's the controls within an AI to focus in, and you can configure it, right? No journal entries on a Saturday, Sunday. You think through all the anomalies that you would look for and train your AI on it. That fraud and error detection will ever remain so critical. Jamie, I'll punt it over to you.
AI governance, non-negotiable. Especially as you're rolling this out, implementing it, using it on an ongoing basis, you want to make sure that you're still retaining control of it. You need to have a policy in place, and you need to be consistently, or really constantly, updating it to reflect what's going on in the marketplace. You want to make sure that this is being revisited on at least an annual basis, if not more frequent than that, and having conversations with your employees to find out, what are you doing with it? Some may not be using it at all, and others will have really cool use cases that they're showing to you that may trigger something that says, we got to address this. As Hassan alluded to earlier, shadow AI is a real risk.
Yeah, the unapproved shadow AI that your employees are using, that they're using either free or any personal tools that they may or may not be paying for, and that bypass your organizational controls. I mean, that's where the risk really comes in. Establishing that governance early and upfront really just ensures that your AI strengthens rather than weakens your nonprofit's control environment. So AI governance, non-negotiable. Guardrails that you're going to put in place, non-negotiable. Automate internal control, I think, is just, it's, we further that commentary that really take stock of all your internal controls through the finance function, see who can make changes to these controls, who's in charge of these controls, and making sure that they're in place, they're designed and operating effectively, keeping that documentation so that if that person or that function is no longer there, you can punt that over to another colleague, and then obviously analyzing workflows and all the access privileges on an ongoing and consistent basis is going to be ever so critical. Spoke about governance and change management, outcomes and key takeaways. Jamie, I'll let you start. And then I'll probably ask David to come back on in a couple of minutes because I know we have a couple of questions that he may want us to address.
I mean, the key takeaways for me is really know what you're looking to achieve and build into it measurable outcomes so that way you can really assess if you're getting what you thought out of it and make sure you have buy-in on it. Again, this is not to replace people. It's to augment and to help people do things more efficiently and really reduce the time needed on mundane, repeatable tasks. That's really my takeaway on this. It's out here. We're using it. Make sure you're doing it in a smart, achievable way.
Yeah. From a finance function, faster closes, better reporting, get away from processing and focus on insights, and then ensuring your governance makes and gains sustainability as you proceed. I know David is back on. David.
Hello, Hassan and Jamie. Great job this afternoon with this topic. Wonderful, wonderful information. We do have a couple of questions that have come in from our audience members, and thank you for those questions. And I think, and as we can see, while we ask the questions, the last keyword is our fourth keyword is up on the screen. So please feel free to click through as necessary. I think the first one is a great question because it helps maybe organizations get started on this AI journey. Some folks are still afraid to use technology. So if we think about nonprofits who are just beginning the AI journey, is there a finance function that delivers the fastest and lowest risk return when piloted first? Kind of to give people a flavor of what's going on and how we can see the power of fairly quickly with low risk.
Hassan, I think maybe you'd be great for this as you help many of our organizations implement these new processes.
The one, and I was just thinking through it, David, as you were stating the question, the one that I feel that a lot of our clients are focused in on is on the expense reporting side. They find it cumbersome. Also, there's a timing issue that, receipts are coming in 4 months later than when the expense was approved. And we're not talking about the small, minuscule expenses that, you entertained a vendor or, you paid for a certain team dinner, not that, but you're really focused on the large procurement cycles where you have and this actually happened yesterday, that you have 60 interns that are going to be with your nonprofit throughout the summer. So you have their laptops coming in, and that's a huge purchase. Instead of waiting for a person or a team or a function to submit that expense report with their attachment, I mean, having that AI built in and utilizing the right tools is going to pay dividends because you're going to recognize the ROI by paying your vendors. You can negotiate better terms with your vendors if you're making these payments on a very continual, ongoing, timely basis. There's a lot of benefit, monetary benefit that comes with it. So expense reporting, I feel, has been top of mind as a starting off point, especially if I think through the last year. Jamie, would you like to further comments or anything different that you may have seen?
No, I figured you were going there, and that's really where we see the biggest adoption has been on the expense management. I think next place is really starting to come in on the general ledger system.
Agreed.
All right, so since we only about a minute and a half left in our time together, let's go to the last question that was asked, which kind of is a summary wrap up topic. The last question was, looking ahead, how do we see AI shifting the role of nonprofit finance teams from transactional work to strategic insights?
Strategic insights and augmenting your workforce. We I think there's a common theme: for-profit, non-profit. That will AI replace us? Does it take our functions away? I think it's more a function of your team remains in place. You support and focus on your mission, but you augment your staff with these agents that are essentially just working alongside you. You've trained them, you've configured them, and now they're providing efficiencies that you may not have had in the past. So you free your staff up to truly focus on strategic initiatives and thinking about the future, then looking at the present day and saying, I need to close my books, or I need to get that expense paid, or I need to get that new hire provision. We get away from all of that.
So augmentation, you may find opportunities where people's hours might be reduced from the tasks they used to do, and that frees them up for other tasks. It could free them up for other educational learning to upskill that position, or ultimately you may allow for consolidation of positions, but you won't know until you do some of it to see how it looks and what that augmentation looks like. So, Jamie, Hassan, thank you for some really wonderful, insightful questions and sessions, topics that we went over today. Really, really important to understand how AI can help the finance function in a nonprofit organization and really in any organization. It's become part of everyday life, and the more we get comfortable with it, the more we can learn with it, the more effective we become as finance leaders within our nonprofit clients. So I'm going to pull our session to a close, and please join us for our next live video series, which takes place on May 28th. And it's called Grant Compliance, Navigating an Emerging Risk Area for Nonprofit Organizations. Thank you very much for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Good luck and God bless.